They found my body 3 days after the explosion. At least, that's what the newspapers said. Charred beyond recognition. Burned so badly that they had to use dental records for identification. My mother collapsed at my funeral. I watched from across the cemetery, hidden behind dark sunglasses and a black scarf, as they lowered an empty casket into the ground. My name is Valentina Reyes, and I'm supposed to be dead. The worst part? Watching my little sister Rosa cry over a grave that held nothing but ashes and lies. But you want to know what's even worse than that? Knowing that if I had stayed alive, if I hadn't burned that warehouse down with a stranger's body inside it, Dante Volkov would have killed everyone I loved anyway. And he wouldn't have made it quick. So tell me, if you had to choose between your own soul and your family's survival, which would you pick? Drop your location in the comments right now and tell me you wouldn't have done the same thing. And if you want to see how this ends, hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to tell you will change everything you think you know about love, loyalty, and just how far one woman can go when she's got nothing left to lose. I never meant to fall in love with a monster. But then again, nobody ever does. It started 6 years ago in Miami, back when I was just a 22-year-old college dropout trying to keep my family afloat. My father had died 2 years earlier. A heart attack, they said, though I always suspected the stress of his gambling debts had more to do with it than any blocked artery. He left behind my mother, my 15-year-old sister Rosa, and enough debt to drown us all. I was working 3 jobs, waitressing at a Cuban restaurant in Little Havana, cleaning offices downtown at night, and doing weekend shifts at a hotel near South Beach. I was so tired that some days I forgot what my own bed felt like. Sleep was something I did in 20-minute intervals between shifts, curled up in my car or in the break room at whatever job would let me. The restaurant was called La Rosa Negra, the Black Rose. It should have been my first warning. Dante Volkov walked in on a Tuesday night in August. I remember because Tuesdays were usually slow, and I'd been hoping to get off early to help Rosa with her homework. But then he appeared, and the entire atmosphere of the restaurant changed. Even the air felt different, charged with something dangerous and electric. He wasn't what I expected from a man with a Russian last name. His mother had been Italian, I learned later, and he had her Mediterranean complexion, dark hair, and eyes so intensely blue they looked almost artificial. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my car, and he moved with the kind of confidence that only comes from knowing you're the most dangerous person in any room. "What's good here?" he asked me, his voice smooth, accented with something I couldn't quite place. "Everything," I said, and I meant it. "But the ropa vieja is my favorite. The owner makes it from his grandmother's recipe." "Then bring me that," he said, "and sit with me while I eat." I laughed. "I'm working." "I'll tip you what you'd make in a week. Sit." It wasn't a request. I should have walked away. Should have told my manager, should have called someone, should have recognized the warning signs. But I was exhausted, and he was beautiful. And when was the last time someone had looked at me like I was worth noticing? So I sat. We talked for 2 hours. He asked about my family, my dreams, what I wanted from life. I told him things I'd never told anyone. About my father's debts, about how I was drowning, about how I sometimes stood on the beach at 3 a.m. and screamed at the ocean because it was the only place no one could hear me fall apart. He listened like every word mattered. When he left, he put $5,000 in cash on the table. "For the conversation," he said. "Best meal I've had in years." I tried to refuse it. I really did. But Rosa needed new glasses, and my mother's medication was running low, and I was 2 months behind on rent. I took the money. That was my first mistake. He came back the next week, and the week after that, always on Tuesdays, always asking for me specifically, always leaving ridiculous tips. After a month, he asked me to dinner at his restaurant, a place so exclusive you needed to know someone who knew someone just to get a reservation. I can't, I said. I have another shift. Cancel it. I need the money. I'll pay you double what you'd make. Valentina, I'm not asking you to work for me. I'm asking you to have dinner with me. As a person, not a waitress. Something in the way he said my name made my stomach flip. I went to dinner. 3 months later, I moved into his penthouse. 6 months after that, I found out what he really did for a living. I'd been naive, of course, willfully blind. You don't make the kind of money Dante made from legitimate businesses, and you don't inspire the kind of fear he did from being a respectable citizen. But I'd been so grateful for the reprieve, so relieved to not be drowning anymore, that I'd let myself ignore the signs. My mother's house was paid off. Rosa was in a private school. I had time to sleep, to eat, to remember what it felt like to be human. The price was my conscience. I found out the truth on a Wednesday night. Dante thought I was asleep when he took the call in his office, but I'd woken up thirsty, and I'd heard him speaking in rapid Russian to someone on the phone. His voice had been cold, clinical, nothing like the warm tone he used with me. I don't care about his family, he'd said in English, switching languages mid-conversation. He stole from me. You know the penalty. Make it public. Make it painful. I want everyone to know what happens when they betray me. I'd stood outside his office door, a glass of water trembling in my hand, and felt my entire world shift. The next morning, I saw the news. A man named Roberto Fuentes had been found in a warehouse in Hialeah. The details were vague, but the message was clear. Someone had made an example of him. Roberto Fuentes. I knew that name. He'd been at Dante's birthday party 2 months ago with his wife and 3 daughters. Did you sleep well? Dante asked me over breakfast, kissing my forehead. Yes, I lied. That's when I started planning my escape. But here's the thing about monsters. They're very good at reading people. And Dante was the best. 2 weeks after I'd started secretly saving money and making plans, he proposed. We were on his yacht, anchored off Key West, watching the sunset. He got down on one knee and pulled out a ring that probably cost more than my childhood home. Valentina Reyes, you're the only good thing in my life, the only pure thing I've ever touched. Marry me, and I'll give you the world. I looked at this beautiful, terrible man, and I knew with absolute certainty that if I said no, I'd never leave that boat alive. He might not kill me himself. Dante was too smart for that. But I'd disappear. There'd be an accident, a tragedy. My family would grieve, and life would go on. So, I said yes. And I started planning my funeral. The engagement ring felt like a shackle. Dante wanted a spring wedding. Something grand, he said, with 500 guests and a cathedral ceremony. He'd already put deposits down on venues I'd never seen, hired planners I'd never met, made decisions about a day that was supposed to be ours, but felt entirely his. I smiled and nodded, and pretended to care about whether the roses should be cream or ivory. Meanwhile, I was learning everything I could about the man I was supposed to marry. Dante Volkov wasn't just a criminal. He was a dynasty. His father had been a brigadier in the Russian mob before being murdered in a power struggle when Dante was 16. Instead of running, Dante had consolidated power, eliminated his father's killers, and built an empire that stretched from Moscow to Miami. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking. If it was illegal and profitable, Dante had a piece of it. But his real genius was in legitimacy. He owned restaurants, hotels, nightclubs, real estate developments. He donated to charities, attended galas, had politicians on speed dial. To the outside world, he was a successful entrepreneur with a mysterious past. Only people in his world knew the truth. And now I was part of that world. The worst part was that I still loved him. God help me, I did. Because Dante wasn't just the monster I'd heard on the phone that night. He was also the man who remembered that I liked my coffee with cinnamon, who bought out entire movie theaters so we could watch films alone, who held me during thunderstorms because he knew they reminded me of the night my father died. He was two people, and I'd fallen for both of them. "You've been distant," he said one night as we lay in bed. His fingers traced patterns on my shoulder, gentle, intimate. "What's wrong, mi cielo?" He'd learned Spanish for me. Little phrases, endearments, enough to make my mother smile when he visited. "Just stressed about the wedding," I said. "It's a lot." "We can make it smaller if you want. I just want you happy." "No, it's fine. Your family—" "You're my family now. The only one that matters." He kissed my neck, and I fought the urge to cry. How do you mourn someone who's still alive? How do you grieve a future you're planning to destroy? I started making preparations in January. The wedding was set for April 15th. 4 months to disappear. First, I needed money. Not Dante's money. Anything connected to him would be traceable. I needed cash, and lots of it. I started stealing. Small amounts at first, skimming from the household accounts, pocketing hundreds here and there when I was sent shopping. Dante was generous, even careless with money sometimes. He'd never miss a few thousand. But I needed more than a few thousand. That's when I met Iskander. Iskander Petrov was Dante's accountant, a nervous 40-year-old man with thinning hair and hands that never stopped trembling. He came to the penthouse once a month to go over the books with Dante, and he always looked like he was one panic attack away from a heart attack. I'd brought him coffee one afternoon while Dante was on a call. "Thank you, Miss Reyes," he'd said, his accent thicker than Dante's. "Valentina, please. Miss Reyes is my mother." He'd smiled nervously. "You're very kind. Mr. Volkov is lucky man." "Is he?" Something in my voice made Iskander look up sharply. Our eyes met, and I saw it. Recognition. He knew. Somehow, this trembling man knew exactly what I was feeling. "I should get back to work," he'd said quickly. But the next month, when he returned, I made sure to be alone with him. "I need help," I said without preamble. "And I think you want out as badly as I do." He'd gone pale. "I don't know what—" "You have a daughter, Anna. She's 12. She lives with your ex-wife in Brooklyn because you don't want her anywhere near this life. You send them money, but it's never enough. Because how do you put a price on safety?" His hands started shaking harder. "How do you—" "I pay attention. I listen. And I know that you're terrified every single day that Dante will find out you've been skimming money from the organization for years." The color drained entirely from his face. "I'm not going to tell him," I said quickly, "because I need you to help me disappear. And in exchange, I'll make sure you disappear too." "He'll kill us both," Iskander whispered. "Only if he finds us. Are you in or not?" He was in. Over the next 2 months, Iskander became my lifeline. He taught me how to hide money, how to create false trails, how to move cash without leaving a trace. He had contacts from his years in the organization: forgers, smugglers, people who specialized in making problems disappear. "You'll need a body," he told me one night during one of our secret meetings. "If you want him to believe you're dead, you'll need proof." "I know," I said. "Can you do that? Can you kill someone to save yourself?" "I don't have to kill anyone," I said. "I just need to find someone who's already dead." That's when I met Lucia. Lucia Torres was a junkie from Overtown, a woman about my age and build who'd been in and out of rehab for years. I found her through a contact of Iskander's, someone who worked with the city's homeless population. I'd gone to see her at a shelter, pretending to be a volunteer. "Why do you want to help me?" she'd asked, suspicious and strung out. "Because I think everyone deserves a second chance," I'd lied. I gave her money, a lot of it. Enough for her to get clean, to start over, to maybe actually survive. I told her about a rehab facility in California that had helped people like her. Told her I'd pay for everything if she was serious about getting sober. She cried and hugged me and said I was an angel. 2 weeks later, she overdosed in a motel room in Alapata. I found out through my contact at the shelter. Lucia had never made it to California. She'd used the money I gave her to score, and she'd taken too much. I went to identify the body at the morgue, claiming to be her sister. No one questioned it. No one cared. She was just another statistic, another dead junkie in a city full of them. I paid the morgue attendant, another contact of Iskander's, $10,000 to hold her body for me. "This is insane," he'd said. "You understand that, right? This is actually insane." "I know," I'd said. "Can you do it or not?" He could. Everything was falling into place. I had the money, the body, the plan. All I needed now was the right moment. Dante gave it to me himself. "I have to go to New York next week," he said one evening in late March. "Business. I'll be gone for 4 days. Will you be okay here alone?" "Of course," I said. "I have wedding stuff to do anyway." He kissed me deeply. "I'm going to make you so happy, Valentina. I promise." That's when I knew I had to do it. Not because I didn't believe him, but because I did. The warehouse Dante owned in Wynwood was scheduled for demolition. It had been sitting empty for months, waiting for permits and paperwork to clear so it could be torn down and replaced with luxury condos. It was perfect. Iskander had the keys. He had keys to everything. That was part of his job, managing Dante's properties, making sure everything was accounted for. No one would question why he was there. No one would think twice about a routine inspection. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" he asked me the night before Dante left for New York. We were meeting in a diner in North Miami Beach, far from anywhere Dante's people might recognize us. "No," I said honestly. "But I'm doing it anyway." "Once you do this, there's no going back. You understand that? You'll be dead to everyone. Your family, your friends, everyone who's ever known you." "I know." "And you think that's better than just leaving? Just disappearing?" "You don't understand him like I do," I said. "If I just leave, he'll find me. He'll burn the entire world down looking for me. But if I'm dead," I took a shaky breath. "If I'm dead, he'll grieve. And then he'll move on. And my family will be safe." "Will they, though?" Iskander asked quietly. "He loves them because he loves you. What happens when you're gone?" It was the question I'd been avoiding for months. "That's why I need you to promise me something," I said. "The money I've saved, $500,000. I need you to set up a trust for my mother and Rosa. Anonymous. Something they can't trace back to Dante or to me. Can you do that?" "Yes. But Valentina, if you really want to protect them, you need to make sure Dante never suspects the truth. Because if he finds out you faked your death, if he even suspects it—" "I know," I whispered. "That's why it has to be perfect." Dante left for New York on a Wednesday morning. He kissed me goodbye at the penthouse, told me he loved me, made me promise to call him every night. "I'll miss you," he said. "I'll miss you too," I said. It was the last true thing I'd ever say to him. That night, I put my plan into motion. Iskander picked me up at midnight in a rental car. We drove to the morgue first, where our contact had Lucia's body waiting in a body bag. She'd been dead for 3 weeks and kept in refrigeration. The attendant had already removed her teeth, replacing them with a set that matched my dental records. Another $10,000. Another moral line crossed. "You're sure no one will check DNA?" I asked Iskander as we loaded the body into the trunk. "They won't have anything to check it against," he said. "You're not in any criminal databases. And besides, by the time anyone thinks to request it, there won't be enough left to test." The warehouse was dark when we arrived. Iskander had already turned off the security cameras, made sure there'd be no digital record of us being there. We carried Lucia's body inside, and I tried not to think about what I was doing. Tried not to imagine her family, her life, the person she might have been if the world had been kinder. "I'm sorry," I whispered to her as we positioned her body in the center of the warehouse. "I'm so sorry." Then I dressed her in my clothes, my favorite jeans, the sweater Dante had bought me for Christmas, the necklace my father had given me when I was 16. That part hurt the most, but it had to be done. It had to be something they'd recognize. Iskander had rigged the warehouse with accelerant, not too much. It had to look like an accident, like faulty wiring or something exploding, but enough to ensure the body would be badly burned. "You should go," I told him. "Get to the airport. By morning, you need to be gone." "What about you?" "I have to make a call, establish my timeline. Then I'll leave." He hugged me, this nervous man who'd become my unlikely partner in crime. "Good luck, Valentina. I hope you find whatever you're looking for." "You too. Give Anna a hug for me, wherever you end up." He left, and I was alone with Lucia's body and the choice I was about to make. I called Dante at 1:47 a.m. "Valentina? What's wrong?" He sounded alert immediately, like he'd been waiting for bad news. "Sorry, I couldn't sleep," I said, making my voice soft, sleepy. "I just wanted to hear your voice." "Are you okay? You sound strange." "I'm fine. Just miss you. How's New York?" We talked for 20 minutes about nothing. His meetings, the weather, what I'd eaten for dinner. Normal couple things. I memorized every word, knowing it was the last conversation we'd ever have. "I love you," he said, before hanging up. "I love you too," I said. And I meant it. That's the part that still keeps me up at night. After we hung up, I set the timer on the incendiary device Iskander had prepared. I had 30 minutes. I took one last look at Lucia's body. "Thank you," I said. "I know you didn't choose this, but thank you." Then I ran. I was 10 blocks away when the warehouse exploded. The sound was enormous, A thunderclap that shook car windows and set off alarms across the neighborhood. I watched from a distance as flames engulfed the building, as fire trucks raced past me, as the sky turned orange with burning. Someone was screaming. It took me a moment to realize it was me. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. I went to the safe house Iskander had arranged, a tiny apartment in Homestead, paid for in cash, under a fake name. I cut my hair in the bathroom sink, dyed it from dark brown to blonde, put in colored contacts to change my eyes from brown to green. The woman in the mirror wasn't Valentina Reyes anymore. Valentina Reyes was dead. I watched the news obsessively for 3 days. They found the body exactly when I'd planned. The story was everywhere. Woman dies in Wynwood warehouse fire. They interviewed neighbors, showed pictures of the burning building, speculated about what had happened. Then they released my name. I watched my mother collapse on camera. Watched Rosa sob into a reporter's microphone, saying she didn't understand, saying I'd just talked to her that afternoon, saying it didn't make sense. I wanted to call them. God, I wanted to call them so badly. But I couldn't. Dante flew back immediately. I saw him at the morgue on the news, looking devastated, looking broken. He identified the body. My body. Lucia's body. The body of no one and everyone. The funeral was 4 days later. I almost didn't go. Iskander had warned me against it, said it was too dangerous, too stupid. But I had to see it, had to make it real. So I stood in that cemetery, hidden behind sunglasses and a scarf, and watched them bury me. Dante spoke at the service. I couldn't hear what he said from where I was standing, but I saw him break down at the graveside. Saw him fall to his knees in the dirt like someone had cut his strings. Part of me wanted to run to him. Part of me wanted to tell him it was all a lie, that I was alive, that we could start over somehow. But I knew better. So I turned and walked away from Valentina Reyes forever. Now here's what I want to know, and I need you to be honest in the comments. If someone you loved turned out to be a monster, could you still love them? Could you mourn them even while you were running from them? Tell me what you would do, because I'm still not sure I made the right choice. Being dead was harder than I expected. The first month was the worst. I'd holed up in that tiny homestead apartment with nothing but basic furniture, a burner phone, and the crushing weight of what I'd done. I couldn't contact anyone from my old life, couldn't check on my mother or Rosa, couldn't even scroll through social media without risking someone tracing my digital footprint. I was a ghost in my own life. The money Iskander had hidden for me was accessible through a series of offshore accounts and cryptocurrency transfers that I barely understood. He'd left me detailed instructions before he disappeared. He was in Vienna now, or maybe Prague, somewhere in Europe with Anna, living under a new name. We'd agreed never to contact each other again. I had enough money to survive for years if I was careful. The question was, survive as who? My new identity was Elena Marquez, a freelance graphic designer from Colombia. Iskander had gotten me a complete set of documents, passport, driver's license, even a work history and social media accounts that had been carefully cultivated for months. Elena was boring, forgettable. Exactly the kind of person no one would look at twice. I hated her. But I had to become her if I wanted to live. I'd planned to leave Miami immediately, to get as far from Dante as possible. But something kept me there, some masochistic need to stay close to the life I'd abandoned. I rented a small studio in Coral Gables, started taking on actual freelance work to maintain my cover, built a quiet, lonely life in the shadows of my old one. At night, I'd drive past places I used to go. The restaurant where I'd met Dante, the beach where we'd watched sunrises, the hospital where my mother worked as a nurse. I was haunting my own memories. 2 months after my death, I saw Rosa at a cafe in Coconut Grove. She was with friends, laughing at something on someone's phone, looking so much older than the 15-year-old I'd left behind. She wore the necklace I'd given her for her birthday, a small silver cross that matched mine, the one I'd put on Lucia's body before I burned her. I wanted to go to her, wanted to tell her I was alive, that I was sorry, that I'd done it all for her. Instead, I paid for my coffee and left before she could see me. That night, I got drunk for the first time in my life, drank an entire bottle of wine and cried until I threw up, curled on the bathroom floor of my sad little studio, mourning a life I'd killed with my own hands. Being dead, I realized, was just another kind of prison, but at least my family was safe. The trust Iskander had set up had kicked in. An anonymous benefactor had paid off my mother's medical bills, set up a college fund for Rosa, given them enough financial security that they didn't have to struggle anymore. It was cold comfort, but it was something. 3 months after the funeral, I made a mistake. I'd been so careful, so paranoid about being seen, about leaving traces. But loneliness makes you stupid, and I was desperately lonely. There was a gallery opening in Wynwood, a new artist someone had been talking about online. I'd loved art before everything happened, had dreamed of going to art school before my father died and reality crashed in. Elena Marquez was supposed to be a graphic designer. It made sense that she'd go to gallery openings, so I went. The gallery was crowded, full of Miami's art scene crowd, hipsters and socialites and people who bought expensive things to prove they had taste. I blended in easily, just another woman in black admiring abstract paintings I didn't understand. That's when I saw him. Dante. He was standing in front of a massive canvas, a study in reds and blacks that looked like violence rendered in oil paint. He wore a dark suit, no tie, and he looked thinner than I remembered. Hollow, like something inside him had been scooped out and nothing had filled the space. My heart stopped. "Run," my brain screamed. Get out now." But I couldn't move. After 3 months of grief and isolation and pretending to be someone else, seeing him felt like oxygen after drowning. He turned, and for one terrible, infinite second, our eyes met. I waited for recognition, waited for him to see through the blonde hair and green contacts, to see Valentina beneath Elena's carefully constructed mask. But his gaze slid past me like I was nobody. Because I was nobody. I was Elena Marquez, and Valentina Reyes was dead. He looked away, and I remembered how to breathe. I should have left then, should have taken it as the warning it was. But I stayed. I watched him move through the gallery, alone, speaking to no one. He stopped in front of a smaller painting near the back, a portrait of a woman with dark hair and sad eyes, her face half hidden in shadow. He stared at it for 20 minutes. Then he bought it. I followed him out of the gallery, not close, not obviously, but I followed him. Watched him get into his black SUV with his driver, watched them pull away into Miami traffic. When I got home that night, I Googled the painting he'd bought. It was titled Absence. That's when I knew. Dante wasn't moving on. He was drowning in grief, the same way I was. And somehow, that made everything worse. I started following him after that. Not regularly, I wasn't completely suicidal. But once a week, maybe twice, I'd track him down and watch from a distance. I told myself I was making sure he wasn't hunting for me, making sure he believed I was really dead. But the truth was simpler and more pathetic. I missed him. 4 months after my death, I saw him at the cemetery. He came every Sunday, I'd learned. Always alone, always staying for exactly 30 minutes. He'd stand at my grave, at Lucia's grave, and just stare at the headstone. Valentina Reyes, beloved daughter, sister, and fiancé, gone too soon. I watched from behind a mausoleum as he knelt in the grass, his hand on the marble. "I'm sorry," I heard him say. The wind carried his voice to where I hid. "I'm so sorry, Misiano. I should have protected you. Should have been there." He thought it was his fault. The warehouse had been his property. The fire investigators had blamed faulty wiring, but I knew what Dante was thinking. That his enemies had targeted the building to send a message. That I'd been collateral damage in his war. That I'd died because I'd been foolish enough to love him. He blamed himself. I wanted to scream, wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, that I'd done this, that every choice had been mine. But I stayed silent, and I watched him grieve for a woman who'd never really existed. That night, I made a decision. I had to leave Miami. Had to leave Florida entirely. Staying here, orbiting Dante's grief like a moth around a flame, was going to get me killed, or discovered, or both. I started making plans. I'd go to California, or maybe Portland, somewhere far from the life I'd known. Elena Marquez would get a fresh start in a new city, and Valentina Reyes would finally, truly, be dead. I bought a plane ticket for 3 weeks out, gave notice on my apartment, started packing up the small life I'd built. Everything was ready. And then Dante showed up at my door. I'd been packing books when the knock came. 3 sharp raps that made my blood freeze. Through the peephole, I saw him. Dante Volkov, standing in the hallway of my apartment building, looking directly at my door. My mind raced. How did he find me? What did he know? Was I about to die? He knocked again. "I know you're in there," he said. His voice was calm, controlled. "I can hear you breathing. Open the door." Every instinct screamed at me to run. There was a fire escape in the bedroom, a go bag packed with cash and fake IDs hidden in the closet. I could be gone in 60 seconds, but if he'd found me, if he knew, running would only delay the inevitable. So I opened the door. He stared at me, at Elena, with her blonde hair and green eyes, and frowned. "Can I help you?" I asked, making my voice higher, adding a slight accent that wasn't quite mine. "Sorry," he said, and I heard confusion in his voice. "Wrong apartment. I'm looking for..." He checked his phone. 3B. "This is 3A, I said, pointing to the number on my door. 3B is across the hall. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Recognition? Suspicion? "You look familiar," he said slowly. "Have we met?" "I don't think so," I said. "I would remember." Lie, lie, lie. He kept staring, and I felt like I was being dissected. "Sorry to bother you." He turned and knocked on 3B. I closed my door carefully, locked it, and stood with my back against it, trying not to hyperventilate. Through the wall, I heard voices. A woman's voice, then Dante's. They talked for maybe 5 minutes. Then I heard a door close, footsteps in the hallway, the elevator dinging. I waited 10 minutes. Then I carefully opened my door and looked out. empty hallway. I knocked on 3B. The woman who answered was in her 60s, gray hair, kind face. "Hi," I said. "Sorry, I heard someone at your door earlier. Is everything okay?" "Oh, yes, dear. Just a man asking questions about the girl who used to live in your apartment. Valentina something? He said she was his fiancé, that she died, but he wanted to trace her last steps or something." She shook her head. "Very sad." My apartment. Elena Marquez was living in an apartment that Valentina Reyes had visited. "Did you know her?" the woman asked. "No," I whispered. "I never met her." I went back inside and pulled up the lease. The apartment had been rented by a woman named Sarah Chen 6 months before Elena moved in. But before that, I checked the records. Before Sarah Chen, the apartment had been empty for 2 years after a tenant named Miguel Santos moved out. So why did Dante think Valentina had been here? I spent the next 3 hours in a panic, searching the apartment for anything that might have connected Valentina to this place. I found it in the bedroom closet, behind a loose panel in the wall. A burner phone. Iskander's burner phone. This was where he'd been living when we planned my death. This was where we'd met in secret, where we'd plotted and prepared. And somehow, Dante had traced Iskander here, which meant Dante was investigating my death, which meant he didn't believe I was really gone. I grabbed my go bag and ran. I made it to Atlanta before I stopped running. 3 days of buses and cash transactions and constantly looking over my shoulder, convinced that Dante's people were everywhere. By the time I collapsed in a motel room off I-85, I was exhausted, paranoid, and finally ready to admit the truth. I'd failed. Dante knew. Maybe not the details, maybe not the proof, but he knew. I thought about running further. Canada, maybe, or Mexico. Somewhere I could disappear completely. But I was tired of running, tired of being dead. The motel had Wi-Fi, so I did something incredibly stupid. I logged into one of Valentina's old email accounts. I'd set up the account years ago for junk mail and online shopping, nothing important. Dante wouldn't have known about it. But I'd kept the password in my head, and now, sitting in a dingy motel room in Georgia, I wanted to see what I'd missed. There were hundreds of unread emails. Spam, mostly. Promotional offers. Notifications from social media accounts that no longer existed. And one email from Dante, sent 2 weeks after my funeral. Subject line: I know. My hands shook as I opened it. Valentina, if you're reading this, then I was right. You're alive. I don't know why you did it. Don't know what I did to make you so afraid that you'd burn the world down to get away from me. But I know you didn't die in that warehouse. The woman they buried wasn't you. Iskander disappeared the same night you died. His accounts were emptied. His contacts went dark. You think I wouldn't notice? You think I wouldn't put it together? I've been looking for you. I will never stop looking for you. Not because I want to hurt you. God, Valentina, I could never hurt you. But because I need to know why. Why you left. Why you thought death was better than a life with me. If you're reading this, please, come home. We can fix this. Whatever I did, whatever scared you, we can fix it. I love you. I will always love you. D. I read it 17 times. Then I threw up in the motel bathroom. He knew. He'd known for months. But he was still looking for Valentina, not Elena. Which meant he hadn't connected me to the blonde woman in Coral Gables. Which meant I still had a chance. I just had to decide what to do with it. I spent a week in that Atlanta motel, trying to figure out my next move. The smart thing would be to disappear completely. Change my identity again. Move somewhere remote. live the rest of my life as someone else. But I kept thinking about that email, about the pain in Dante's words, about the fact that he blamed himself for my death, that he thought he'd failed me. He had failed me, in a way. Failed to be the kind of man I could love without fear. But I'd failed him too. Failed to tell him the truth, to give him a chance to change, to be honest about what I'd seen and what it meant. What if I'd been wrong? The question haunted me. What if I'd made a terrible mistake? What if Dante would have let me go, if I'd just asked? What if I'd destroyed both our lives for nothing? I needed to know. So I did something even stupider than checking my email. I responded, "D, you're right. I'm alive. I'm sorry I put you through this. Sorry for the pain I caused. But I need you to understand. I wasn't running from you. I was running from what you do, from the violence and the blood and the knowledge that everyone you touch eventually dies. I saw what you did to Roberto Fuentes, heard you order his execution like you were ordering dinner. And I knew that if I stayed, one day you'd look at me with those same cold eyes. So I left. You say you love me, and I believe you. But love isn't enough when one person is a monster. Don't look for me. Let Valentina stay dead. Please. V." I sent it before I could change my mind. Then I waited. His response came 6 hours later. "V. Roberto Fuentes was trafficking children, selling girls as young as 8 to men who should be burned alive for what they do. I gave him money to start legitimate businesses, to get out of that world, and he used it to expand his operation. So yes, I had him killed. And I would do it again. You think I'm a monster. Maybe you're right. But I'm a monster who only kills other monsters. Everything I do, every terrible thing, is to protect people who can't protect themselves. Including you. Including your family. Do you know why your father really died, Valentina? It wasn't a heart attack. We need to talk. Face to face. I'll come alone, unarmed. Name the place. D." My father? What did he mean about my father? I stared at that email for an hour, my mind racing. Finally, I typed, "Miami, the beach where you first told me you loved me. Tomorrow at midnight. If you bring anyone, I disappear forever." His response was immediate. "I'll be there." I flew back to Miami that night. The beach was empty at midnight. I got there early, at 11:30, and hid in the shadows near the lifeguard stand. The same lifeguard stand where Dante had first said those 3 words, 6 months into our relationship, with the ocean crashing behind us and the moon making everything silver. "I love you," he'd said. "I know I shouldn't. I know I'm not good for you. But I love you anyway." "Then be good for me," I'd whispered back.
"Be the man I think you are." "I'll try," he'd promised. But he hadn't tried hard enough, or I hadn't believed enough, or both. Now I waited in the dark, wondering if I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life. Dante arrived at 11:55. He came alone, as promised, wearing jeans and a dark t-shirt. No suit, no armor, just a man walking across sand toward a ghost. I stepped out of the shadows. He froze. Even with blonde hair and green eyes, he knew me instantly. I saw recognition hit him like a physical blow, saw his knees nearly buckle. "Valentina," he breathed. "Hi, Dante." We stood 10 feet apart, the ocean between us and the past, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke.
You look different, he finally said. I am different. But alive. You're alive. His voice broke. Do you have any idea what these past 4 months have been like? I mourned you. I buried you. I wanted to die because I thought I'd failed you. You did fail me, I said. You lied to me about who you were, what you were. I never lied. I just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing. Is it? He took a step closer. You faked your death, put someone else's body in a fire, and let me think you were gone forever. Is that honesty? I was protecting myself, protecting my family. From me? The pain in his voice was acid. You thought I would hurt you? I thought you would kill me if I left. He flinched like I'd slapped him. Never. Valentina, I would burn the world down before I let anyone hurt you, including myself. Then tell me about my father. His expression went cold. You want the truth? The real truth? Yes. Your father didn't just have gambling debts. He owed money to some very dangerous people. The kind of people who take payments in blood when cash runs out. My stomach dropped. They came to collect 3 weeks before he died, Dante continued. We're going to take you and Rosa as collateral, sell you to pay his debts. No. Your father came to me, begged me for help. I didn't know you yet. This was 2 years before we met. But I knew of your family, knew you were good people in a bad situation. What did you do? I paid his debts. All of them. Over $200,000. In exchange, your father agreed to work for me. Nothing criminal, just consulting on some real estate deals. He was an accountant before the gambling got bad. I felt like the sand was shifting beneath my feet. He was working for me the night he died, Dante said quietly. There was an audit, some paperwork that needed to be sorted before a deal closed. The stress triggered a massive coronary. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was gone. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because I made sure they didn't. Your father made me promise that if anything happened to him, you'd never know about his connection to me. He wanted you to remember him as a good man, not someone who'd gotten in bed with the mob. Tears were streaming down my face now. So I kept that promise, Dante said. Paid for the funeral anonymously. Made sure your family was taken care of from a distance. And then 2 years later, I walked into a restaurant in Little Havana and saw the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen in my life. You knew who I was, I whispered. That first night. You already knew. Yes. So what? This was all some kind of plan? Get close to me to honor a debt to my father? No. He closed the distance between us, stopping just close enough that I could feel the heat of him. I came to the restaurant to check on you, make sure you were okay. I was going to have a meal, leave a good tip, and never come back. But then you sat down with me, and you were so real, so alive. And I fell in love with you right there. Love, I said bitterly. You don't know what that word means. Don't I? I've spent 4 months trying to find you because I couldn't accept that you were gone. I've interviewed hundreds of people, followed every lead, refused to believe that the universe would be cruel enough to take you from me. If that's not love, what is? It's obsession. Maybe, but tell me you don't feel it too. Tell me you didn't come back to Miami, didn't stay when you should have run, didn't follow me around the city like you were the ghost and I was the haunting. I stared at him, shocked. You knew? I saw you at the gallery, recognized you immediately. Did you really think colored contacts and blonde hair would fool me? I know every inch of you, Valentina. Know the way you move, the way you stand, the way you breathe. You could change everything about yourself, and I'd still know you anywhere. Then why didn't you say something? Because I was afraid if I grabbed you, you'd run again, and I couldn't lose you twice. He reached up slowly, carefully, and cupped my face in his hands. Tell me to let you go. Tell me you don't love me anymore, and I'll walk away. I'll let Valentina Reyes stay dead, and I'll never bother Elena Marquez again. I should have told him to leave, should have held on to my conviction, my fear, my certainty that loving him was a death sentence. But I was so tired of being dead. I can't, I whispered. I can't tell you that. Then come home. I can't do that either, not unless things change, not unless you change. Tell me how. Tell me what you need, and I'll do it. Get out, I said. Leave the organization. Walk away from the violence and the blood and be normal. Valentina, that's my price. You want me alive? You want me back? That's what it costs. He was quiet for a long time, his hands still on my face, his blue eyes searching mine. Okay, he finally said. Okay? I'll do it. I'll get out. Just like that? Just like that. He smiled, sad and small. You're asking me to choose between the life I built and the woman I love. That's not a choice. That's obvious. It won't be easy. Your enemies will become someone else's problem. I'll make arrangements, transfer power, ensure a smooth transition. Give me 3 months. 3 months, I repeated. And then we leave, both of us. We go somewhere new, start over as different people. Elena and, he thought, Diego. Will be boring, anonymous, everything you wanted. What about my family? They can know you're alive if you want, or we can keep the secret, whatever keeps them safest. I should have hesitated, should have questioned whether he could really walk away from decades of criminal empire building. But I'd spent 4 months being dead, and I wanted to be alive again. 3 months, I agreed. He kissed me then, and it felt like resurrection. The next 3 months were the longest of my life. Dante kept his word. He started dismantling his organization carefully, piece by piece. Territories were negotiated away, businesses sold or transferred, alliances renegotiated. It was delicate work, the kind that could get you killed if you weren't careful. There were attempts on his life, 2 shootings, 1 poisoning, a car bomb that he barely escaped. His associates thought he was weak, that grief had broken him. They had no idea he was stronger than he'd ever been. I stayed hidden as Elena, but we met in secret. Encrypted calls, coded messages, stolen nights in safe houses across the city. It was dangerous and stupid and more alive than I'd felt in years. Tell me about our new life, I'd say, as we lay tangled together in some anonymous hotel room. We'll live in a small town, he'd murmur against my hair. Somewhere with mountains and clean air. You'll paint. I'll learn to cook. We'll be disgustingly normal. I've never painted in my life. Then you'll learn. We have time now. We have the rest of our lives. On month 2, I made a decision. I needed to tell my mother. Dante tried to talk me out of it. The more people who know, the more dangerous it is. She buried me. She thinks I'm dead. I can't do that to her anymore. So I went to her house late one night, let myself in with the key I knew she still kept under the garden gnome. She was in the kitchen, making tea, and when she turned and saw me, she dropped the kettle. Mija, she whispered. Dios mío. I'm sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry. She slapped me, hard, then pulled me into her arms and sobbed. I told her everything. The debts, the fear, the plan, the truth about Dante. She listened without interrupting, tears streaming down her face. "You let me bury you," she said when I finished. "I put my baby in the ground. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so... Stop apologizing and tell me you're safe now. Tell me this ends well." "It does. We're leaving. Starting over. You and Rosa can come if you want, or we can set you up somewhere safe." "Rosa can't know," my mother said firmly. "Not yet. She's too young, too angry. She'd tell someone, or try to find you, and someone would get hurt. When she's older, when this is really over, then we tell her." "Okay. But I want to meet him, this man you loved enough to die for. I want to see him before you disappear." So I brought Dante to meet my mother. It was the strangest dinner of my life. My mother, who'd thought I was dead. Dante, who'd almost died a dozen times in the past 60 days. And me, caught between two lives. Not quite dead and not quite alive. "You love my daughter?" my mother asked Dante over coffee. "More than anything. Enough to leave your world for her?" "I already am." She studied him for a long moment. "Then you take care of her, because if she dies again, I'll kill you myself." Dante smiled. "Deal." 3 months to the day after our conversation on the beach, Dante walked away from the Volkov organization. There was no ceremony, no dramatic exit. He simply transferred the last of his holdings, said goodbye to the few people he trusted, and disappeared. We left Miami at dawn. Elena Marquez and Diego Santos, a quiet couple moving to Montana to start a bed and breakfast. It was perfect. 2 years later, I'm standing in the garden of our small house in the mountains, painting. It turns out I'm terrible at it, but Dante loves everything I make anyway. He's inside, actually learning to cook like he promised. I can smell something burning, which means he's attempting bread again. My mother visits twice a year. Rosa thinks she's visiting an old friend. One day, we'll tell her the truth. But for now, this is enough. Dante comes outside, covered in flour, and kisses the top of my head. "Bread?" I ask. "Burnt." "Shocking." He laughs, and it's still the most beautiful sound I've ever heard. "Do you ever regret it?" he asks quietly. "Giving up your old life?" I think about Valentina Reyes, that girl who worked 3 jobs and fell in love with a monster. About the desperate choice she made, the price she paid, the life she killed to survive. No, I say honestly. Valentina had to die. She was drowning in someone else's war, but Elena gets to live. And Diego? I pull him down for a kiss. Diego's my favorite person. Somewhere in Miami, there's a gravestone with my name on it. People visit sometimes, leave flowers for the girl who died too young. Let them. I'm not Valentina Reyes anymore. I'm Elena Santos, wife of a man who learned to leave his monsters behind, daughter of a mother who keeps secrets, sister to a girl who'll someday understand why I had to go. I'm alive, and I'm finally free. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to burn down the life you're living and build a new one from the ashes. I chose fire. I chose death. And in doing so, I chose to live. My name was Valentina Reyes. Now it's Elena Santos. And this time, I get to write my own ending.